realized about my foot, and this is sensitivity, and we're going to go to the practicals at the end of this lesson, okay? What I understood at the end of this, when I was running, is that my whole foot, when I put it down, I wasn't getting feedback. That means there was no sensitivity. This is very important, guys, and this is very important for healing and a lot of things. We're going to discuss this a little more. We're going to swim in this area in just a little while, okay? When I hit my leg down on the ground like this, because I've been doing this, I wasn't getting the feedback what I need from the full foot. It would just go tuck like this, and there was no feedback, okay? And I realized that until I start getting feedback on my whole foot, I won't be able to run or put it in the right way. So unless I sensitize my foot from running from the heel, I need to be able to feel the bottom of my feet hitting the ground and coming up like this. I need to be able to feel that. I need to get feedback. It's not just sensitivity like press, but I need to be able to, it needs to come back at me. It needs to come back at me. And if I can get feedback, then I will know how to adjust my foot. Now, that's a life of a mystic, of understanding that, because this is important. When you are doing anything in life, if you don't have feedback from what you're doing, like how do you know what you're saying is right? You can listen to people, and generally people's feedback is not good. It can come out of their own egos, their own eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You need to have a very effective feedback mechanism. And believe me, in the mystical life, or any kind of thing that you're going to ever do in life, you have to set your feedback mechanism. You can't depend on others. I do depend on your wife or your husband is one of the best people who can tell you, okay, because they'll tell you without their ego getting involved. But otherwise, you have very few people who can tell you this. So set up a feedback mechanism, okay? Now, how I set up a feedback mechanism so that my ego, I understand what my ego is and what my spirit is that I write everything about myself every year. This happens every year on a piece of paper, okay? And in the mystical traditions, they call it the black or the white mirror, but you might have heard of it. But it is right from the Bible, because it's from the first part of what they know as the Emerald Tablet, or what is known as the law, okay? Because you're the first mirror is you. You see your face, okay? And then, if you look deeper in from seeing your face, you will see the Spirit. You'll see God. But it is so important that you can see your face. You must never forget the natural face. And a lot of people miss this. So James says that who is the doer is someone who doesn't forget the natural face in the mirror. This is so important. That means every year, because you're changing as well, you need to be able to see your natural face constantly in the mirror and not forget who you are. That's the guy who sees the plank in his eye constantly. You see, he knows exactly, like no one will be able to give me a compliment personally that I don't know of myself. Did you just understand that? No one will be able to surprise me with a compliment. Like, oh, Kirby, you're like, yeah, I know that. Thank you. I know me very well. No one will be able to give me this will be a big problem for me if this happens to me. No one will be able to give me a critical analysis or a criticism that I already don't know of myself. When you get to that place, every year you need to do this. You need to be able to know your weaknesses so thoroughly well. And you need to be able to look objectively at your weaknesses and know your weaknesses so well. And I keep explaining this to people, but I never told them about the mirrors, because that's just for you guys. Okay? And how I do it is I have mirrors. And every year my mirror is written. Okay? So you'll see that my mirror is written, and in my mirror, this year's mirror has 32. 32. Yeah. So sorry about my list, but 32 weaknesses of my character. Just get that. 32 weaknesses of my character on my book. Okay? That's how many weaknesses I have in my character, right? Now that I have recognized. And so I've written it down. And so for 1 week, when the year starts, I write down my weaknesses. Okay? And so first I will hit about, trust me, when you start doing this, you start hitting 15, okay, or 10 or 15, okay? And once you hit about 15, you'll realize that it starts flowing. Or once you hit about 5, it starts, oh my God, this one and that one. And you start writing each one down, okay? Now this is the way to do this, and this is my submission to you guys to do, okay? You write down your weaknesses, okay? You can only do this, guys. Here's the interesting thing. You can only do this if you are not in your ego. And what do you mean by ego? Is if you are not in the consciousness of good and bad. If you're not eating from the tree of good and evil. See, if you have been eating from the tree of good and evil, you are going to get condemned. Okay, now here we're getting to really interesting stuff about ego. And that condemnation, the guy who's getting condemned, you know who that guy is? That guy is the ego. He's the victim. He's the one. He doesn't like to see that. He doesn't like to see, because he's like, no, I feel bad. I feel condemned. I don't want to look at my sins. And a lot of people who are in the grace revival, those guys, a lot of them are feeling condemned, and they don't want you to talk about their mistakes or their faults. The reason is, and these are not sins, these 32, believe me, I mean, when you get to this level, you don't have sins. You know, I live a holy life. But the fact of the matter is, but I have weaknesses, character flaws, okay, that can make me sin, for sure, if I go down those weaknesses, okay, but they're character flaws. And now, you have to see that the person who gets condemned looking at their character flaws is the ego man. Because he's still in a consciousness of eating from the tree of good and evil. So, you have to start writing down, and then you start, as you start opening it up, once you're by the 5th, it starts flowing like a river, like all this, oh my God, but I'm like this here, and this is my situation here, this, da, 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 and this whole thing starts coming up, okay? I will leave it, after I write 15, I will leave it for 1 week, okay? And within that week, once you open the floodgates, believe me, that whole week is like, I start filling in every day another number to that page, like, oh yeah, this one, oh, another one, this one, another one, this one. And so I've written now pages of my weaknesses, okay? And I do 1 week of that. And then I've got now that is the natural face in the mirror. Okay? I do not forget the natural face in the mirror. The man who forgets his natural face in the mirror, guess what he is? He's not a doer of the word. Okay? That's how you improve. That's how you grow. You know your natural face so well. No one can give me a criticism that I already don't know. I'll challenge it because I'm true to my word. I'll look at myself. I'm true to my word. If I hear something about myself that I didn't know, I'm like, man, how the heck did I miss that? Because I am a keen student about who I am in the natural. Who is this natural man? Who is this guy naturally? Okay, I know this natural man so well. And so I can look at myself, like I look at a video, I'm like, that's that, and that, oh, that's that trait. Oh, wow, this is that conversation. Okay, that needs to be fixed. You see? So my natural man is very visible to me. Then, after a week, I write my spiritual man, okay? And that spiritual man, I start writing all the things that I believe that are positives, that are merits in my life, okay? Guys, this is one of the most powerful things you will do, okay? Why? Because you will know yourself so well, okay? And now you've set up a feedback loop and a feedback mechanism for growth, okay? So I will break that down, I will break it down into health, I'll break it down into character, into love, I'll break it down into relationship, I'll break it down into, you can do whatever you want, into finance, every area, into different areas of where I'm weak and where I'm strong. Now here is the amazing thing about this thing, okay? You start writing this, and when you start writing, you'll start realizing a few things about yourself, okay? The first thing you start realizing when you start writing your weaknesses, the first thing that you'll realize, this is the natural face in the mirror, the first natural face, is the way you talk to yourself. That's the first thing you realize. Because as you start writing whatever, say it's in certain areas of your life. So just let's talk about an addiction. Okay, say you have an addiction to alcohol. Say now we're going a bit extreme on this stuff, but say you have an addiction to alcohol. Okay, go natural. Yeah. Yeah, but we'll go with this one and then we'll go down. Okay, so say you have addiction to alcohol. Say, okay, and you're putting it. When you start writing, watch how you will write that. Then you will understand how much ego is involved, because you sometimes might write, I am an alcoholic. Okay, now then you'll realize, okay, or I am an addict. Say you're addicted to anything, something. Okay, you'll realize you'll use words like addict and words like that, and you'll write it down. Now, my submission to you is, as you're learning going to write it down, you can write that first, then cut those words. So if you write, I'm an addict, make sure you cut the word addict and talk to yourself nicely. So you can say, I have a tendency to like alcohol a little too much. You see? And you start correcting immediately. As you're writing about your weaknesses, you start correcting it. You first write what you first thought, then you cut that so that you can see what you cut. Okay, and then you talk to yourself in the right way. As you start doing this, it will be tremendous ministry to you, because you'll realize in different areas of your life, the way you self-talk to yourself is exactly the way you talk or think about others who are doing the same thing. Okay, this is very, very important, guys. So then you'll realize how really condemned you are, or how much the ego is holding on to those areas of your life with a consciousness of sin. Okay, you will realize that in a lot of ways, and this is exactly the self-talk that is going on in your life, whether you write it down or not. If you don't write it down, it's anyway going on and on and on in your subconscious, unconscious mind, and that is why you can't grow, because of the way you consider yourself in those areas. So what you do is you start writing down every single area. Like if there are areas in your life that you have thoughts that are unjust, how are you going to write that down? Will you say, I'm just wicked sometimes? Okay. Now if you write it down like that, and if that's the first thought that comes to you, write that down, cut the word wicked, and say,
I see everyone as liberal or conservative.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, okay, yeah. So you cut that off and you say that I need to work on how fair I am with people. You see, the way you talk about yourself is the way you will think about others. Okay, that's the same subconscious, unconscious ego that is telling you that. That person who is condemned and victimized, that's the sarx, that's the ego. Remember that the law and the sarx work together. The ego and the law works together. Okay, they work hand in hand. So you'll realize the parts of your life that you are caught up under a victimized, egocentric paradigm. Okay, and there'll be many areas. You can see, I eat from the tree of the knowledge of good. If you say it like, you'll say, if you're a conservative or a liberal, a liberal will say, I get angry with conservatives, or I get upset with liberals, or whatever it is. What is that? Okay, or I judge, or I categorize people. Okay, and then you can say, you can cut whatever and you can write it, well, I'm eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil constantly, you know. Stuff like this, I'm very fast to judge, I'm quick to come into judgment, you know. You start writing it down and then you know yourself so well. And I would actually look at that and make sure that I understand that is, because next year that's going to change. And next year, some of those points are not going to be there. I'm going to work on that so well. The interesting thing about this, guys, is when you start writing in the spiritual mirror, in the spirit, in the Christ mirror that you're going to see, you'll realize that in the Christ mirror, it's a crazy thing. Like in one part, you'll have I am lazy, or I find it hard to be encouraged to do certain things. Okay. On the other side, when you're writing the spiritual, the Christ mirror, you'll realize that you will say, I'm very determined and focused. And you'll realize that in you, and this is it's a very powerful realization when you start writing the other mirror, is that in you, you have polarization. That means you realize the duality, okay, the polarization that is in you. So one time you're saying you're lazy, one time you're saying you're so committed. Okay? Don't think that just because you wrote, I'm lazy in this, that you can't say, I'm very, very committed to what I do in that. And you'll realize about yourself, like in this area, there are two. Okay? In this area, I find myself that I can love so much, but also on this area, I can dislike so much. And that is very, very good to see. That they're able to see that. People don't realize that we live in the tension of these two. And that's why they eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So they'll say it's either right or wrong. Okay? Because they've not looked at themselves and said, no, don't worry. I also think this, but I'm also think that. You'll realize, some of you will realize that you are more conservative. If you're a liberal, you will realize that you're more conservative than you knew you were. It'll blow your mind, okay, your values. And some of you conservatives will realize you are more liberal than you thought you were. And then you'll realize, damn, am I a conservative or a liberal? And then you get different boxes there. They say you're whatever, I don't know what they call it, liberal conservatives, conservative liberals, or whatever it is. And you'll realize, man, I am in the middle of all this. And that's a very good place to find yourself, because you'll realize, man, I'm very holistic. And so you find, you're able to really see yourself when you do this. So my submission by next time is to get this thing done, okay? Make sure that you talk to yourself in a very, very kind way of how you will talk to someone else. You're not going to tell someone you are an alcoholic. You're not going to tell someone you are just wicked. You're not going to tell someone that. So don't write about yourself in the same way. And the more you can just change the screen, sweetheart. The more you can really do this and see yourself in exactly who you are, you'll be able to grow, because you'll set up a feedback loop. So now what happens is the feedback, like my feet. Now I'm trying to get my feedback from my foot into my body. So if I can get feedback, then I can place my foot in the right way. If I can't feel anything in my feet, then I don't know where to place my foot. Okay? So my ambition is to get feedback into my foot. And it doesn't have to, if you're diabetic or something you can't have, but it's okay. You can feel some area or whatever it is, you need to get feedback. And as you set your own feedback loop for yourself, you start growing. For instance, I have broken this down into miracles, into signs, into wonders, into the prophetic, into having my natural face, like what am I? Why can't I deal with finances in this way? What are my weaknesses with finances? So I understand exactly how I get discouraged, if my successes fail, what my thoughts are, what my process is. I know exactly what I'm like when I fail in my finances and why I can't get my finances up. I know exactly my natural face in my finances. Okay? And then I realize my spiritual face as well. So there's a very good feedback loop. Now, again, to be able to do this, firstly, you will have to realize that you're out of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You can't eat from right and wrong to get this thing done. If you're eating from a consciousness of sin, then you'll realize, as you're writing, man, I'm feeling so condemned. The guy who is feeling condemned is the ego man. The guy who has no self-worth, who is getting victimized, is the ego man. Okay? The guy who can objectively look at all his weaknesses and see it like, hey, cool, now I know exactly how I can grow, because I see that mistake, I see that fault, I see that weakness. Wow, I'm excited. Okay? The one who feels like that, that's the spirit man, because the spirit man wants to grow. The spirit man wants to yes, now that I know my natural face, I won't forget, because I know the transformation that is happening. Think about what I said, because that's the way you will do your work, your business. That's what you will want from an employer, right? Someone who works for you. Don't you think that that's exactly what you want your employee to be? Like if someone works for you, isn't that your biggest issue why you see people don't grow is because they can't get feedback, or they don't know who they are. They don't know exactly where their weaknesses and where their strengths are. Okay, and then we have a review at the end of every year of telling them, giving them feedback of what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. But we never, because of a false sense of grace, we never do it for ourselves. And this, believe me, you'll start growing very, very fast, and you'll know yourself very well. Now, keeping that aside,